good morning. Tanse. We're back again for day 2 of Atayuge's Giteak storytelling by the elders of this reserve, Red Pheasant. And we have new speakers today, Giteak. They're very knowledgeable. Today, we're going to start off this morning with our, I call her my queen, but she's a clan mother too. Her name is Doreen Daniels. So please listen to her. She's got some great knowledge. So,
Tanse, hello. Tagakiksepayaw. Good morning, Itagog. Students, teachers, and staff. Saya niya itong kiskap mis migusya kapmatsya. Miya itamanis ta. Tepe kaptutagawasak. Minaya. Kiwe go tingetsik. I like to share some stories to the students and that they would probably benefit from all the stories that we're going to share. And I'm going to start off with some short stories on long time ago what my grandmother used to share with us. Long ago, there was a fox and a rabbit by the lake. This fox went hunting on the ice. He caught a fish, and he came to the shore. There he met up with a rabbit. The rabbit asked, "Where did you get the fish?" He asked the fox. The fox said, "I caught it there in the middle of the lake, and this is how I got this fish." And this rabbit was very interested too, but the fox was thinking that he was going to trick this rabbit. So the fox said, "I'll come with you to the middle of the lake to get a fish for yourself." So they went walking in the middle of the lake. And then where he caught the fish was middle of the lake where the ice was open. And the fox tell the rabbit, "Rabbit, you sit on this hole here with your tail." I guess long time ago rabbits had long tails. But anyway, this rabbit sat on that hole, and the fox said, "They'll grab your tail and you pull it, and this is how you're going to catch the fish." Sure enough, pretty soon the rabbit was sitting down in that hole with his tail sticking into the water. This was winter time. Pretty soon he was sitting there for a long time. His tail was frozen. By the time he's trying to pull his tail that he thought he caught a fish, here his tail was frozen to that ice. And he kept pulling and pulling. The fox was helping the rabbit. Pretty soon this rabbit, his tail got caught in there. It went real short. It got caught in that ice. So now today the rabbits, that's why they have that short tail, because of what happened to that rabbit that time. And there's another story I'll share that long time ago this man went hunting. And long time ago, families of a man would go hunting. They would survive from getting deer and moose, and back then it was winter time. This man was they were kind of hungry at home. He had a wife and children. He had parents, but he was younger. So he said, I'm going to go hunting, he told his family. So he got ready. He started going in this trail and he kept going. And this was like late in the afternoon. I thought he would see the animals like the deer and moose at that time. So he kept walking and walking. He got further and it started snowing. It got so bad that it was snowing so hard that it was like a blizzard. He couldn't see anything. Oh no, he said, I think I'm lost. I don't know where to go. This man. He kept walking, trying to trace this little trail. He didn't know where to go now, and it was getting extreme cold. And he didn't see no animals to kill. And he stood right there looking different, like to the north, to the southeast. He didn't know where to go. So anyway, he kept walking and walking. Finally, finally saw there was the thing. He saw a cabin, a place. He thought that maybe I could camp here. Maybe somebody lives here. He could see a light there, and there was a house. He thinks it was a house, and he went walking there, and there was a door. He was knocking on a door. Pretty soon, somebody answered. Come in, Peter. They told him. So he went in. He's Ayape, sit down. That person said to him. So he sat down. He looked around. It was like a house. There was fire going. It was warm. Here he got up and he went and by the stove there and he warmed up. He was cold, very cold. Was talking to that person. He was lost. I didn't know where to go now. It's a big blizzard. And that person said, Haha, utakagi ka pesin. Utakagi kagiyan. He said, you can sleep here overnight. He was, after he warmed up, this person was warming up something to drink and he was cooking something. But this man didn't know what it was. He sat down and there was a table, I guess he sat right beside there, and there was a chair. And pretty soon this person came and brought some berries in front of him, and something to drink like tea, maski huapoy. And this man looked at these berries. He thought he was going to eat like potatoes and meat, but it wasn't that kind. It was just berries. So, anyways, this man was hungry. He started eating those berries, and he was chatting, visiting this person that lived there, and he was telling that person where he came from and what he was doing in the woods here, trying to get. He went hunting and trying to get meat for his family. They were hungry, and that person told him, "You can stay here overnight, and you can go in the morning." It was like a human being he was talking to. So pretty soon he ate those berries because he was hungry and drank that tea. And pretty soon he was tired. So that person made a bed by the fire. So this man went lay down there. He was so tired from walking and it was so cold out there. He fell asleep right away because since it was so warm. So by the morning time he got up. It was early. This person was already cooking again. And the person that was in that house. Again, he come and give him some berries to eat. Berries and some tea. And he looked at that person. He looks like a human being. He started eating them again. Ekse Saito, he said. Ekse, I'm going to be going now. It looks like it's the blizzard had stopped. No, maybe killed something on my way home. That other person said, "Yeah, huh, meow, soon you came. That was good you come visit me." But all this time he didn't know who this person was. He didn't say his name or anything. So he thanked that person. Nanaskumtin, thank you, he says to that person for giving him, allowing him to stay overnight and was warm and gave him berries to eat. So he went walking out, not far from there. On a trail, he went walking back and he looked backwards. Here, there was a bear standing there. That bear was standing there, and here it was that bear all this time that where he was that stayed there. But that bear turned into a human, and that is why he was eating those berries. And now today, this is why they have berries in our ceremonies. When we have ceremonies, they have these berries. They eat those in there, and part of it. That's that two stories I wanted to share, and the other story I wanted to share a little bit is about the day school I went to here in Red Pheasant. I was very young. It was they started off with kindergarten, and this day school was called I think was Saint Francis Roman Catholic School. It had a upstairs and a downstairs. Into that each classroom there was about 5 grades in each downstairs and 5 grades upstairs. There was only 2 teachers, and then about 2 or 3 times a week there was a priest with nuns would come. They would come there and teach the people, the students, about Jesus, about God. They used to even have a movie with it, explaining to students would understand, explaining about heaven and hell. They used to kind of scare the students, explaining these things in there. But it one good ways to learn about God and Jesus too same time, because a lot of our kids don't really understand who is Jesus, who is God, who is Holy Mary. But those are the days where they were teaching us about those things at the school, day school. And it was rough for us. It wasn't easy attending that school. The teachers were rough with us, and a lot of times we were forced to do something. And if we do something wrong, we get that great punishment like belt straps we used to have, and those long rollers, long ones, they used to use on those on us. And to the point we used to kneel down in a corner too. We don't listen, if we don't do our homework, things like that. So a lot of times the students were really quiet in the classrooms, and they were respecting their teachers because we were afraid of them. Maybe they would hit us or do something to us. And then a lot of times I got strappings in my hands real hard, and it would hurt and I would cry. Stuff like that. They wouldn't even care if you cry or not. And they force you to sit still and sit down and do your work. If you have to finish your work, you have to finish it because they're going to force you, or else they twist your ears. You have to do it until you cry or your ears start to bleed sometimes because they pull them and twist it. Today, the students I see in a classroom, these students, they don't listen at all. Even there's discipline with the teachers, but they can't touch these students. That's the thing. But back then for us, it was really difficult. We had to do what they say. because we would get the strappings or they would hit us with rollers. Even in our heads and our bodies, they would use those long rollers. It wasn't easy at all going to school, a day school. And for our snacks, they used to feed us. We called them dog biscuits. They were kind of brown and kind of long. We used to eat those kind. They forced us to eat those. We didn't want to eat them. We had to eat them. They watched us eat them. We used to call them dog biscuits. And then there was such thing as powder milk. They used to mix that with water. We had to drink that with it, and it didn't have a taste on it, but we had to. They forced us on everything, even though were not willing to do things, we had to be forced to do it. Today's students are not forced to do that. They're so lucky. They have good teachers. And they have a lot of teachers. We only had one teacher in one per class. Say there was kindergarten to grade 5 in one classroom, one teacher. There was no teachers aide. So we had to behave ourselves because they were mean to us, the teachers, if we don't smarten up. And then the upstairs was the higher level students, higher grade. And that teacher up there was the principal, along with the teacher being a teacher same time. So if things get worser with us fooling around, not listening, we go see that principal. And that one was a mean one. Like you wouldn't want to go see that principal if you did something bad or wrong. And then the students, coming to the school, to that day school. In the winter time, they used to travel with a sleigh with horses. Very cold weather. Some of the students would walk 5 to 6 miles to come to school. I was lucky we lived near that school. We would be a walking distance from there. But the other students, it was so cold for them, they managed to come to school with the team of horses, the bus driver. I guess it was with the team of horses and sleigh. They had blankets covered with them and they would come to the school every day in the morning and after school. They would be picked up with the team of horses, and if it's in towards summer, the person would use a wagon with horses to pick up the students and take them home after school. It was not easy back then attending school. Lot of that was really difficult for us. And then there was hardly any winter clothes to wear. I remember my parents, my mother, making some sort of a mucklets type a ski tusks na they used to call. He used to hand sew them, and we wear those in the winter time. And mitts he made out of those two. He made those mitts for us because it was very cold to walk, and it was like a mucklets type. We walked to the school with them to warm up our feet. We didn't have no winter clothes back then because people were so poor long time ago. Our parents didn't have education. But then our parents went to residential school. They used to talk about it a little bit, but then they didn't have no education coming back. Some of them were there like 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. And over there, they talk about it was a very, very worst place to be as a student. There was things that happened worser than the day school, they said, because they had to stay at that residential school. So my parents used to talk a little bit about it. They didn't want to talk about it too much because it was the worst things that happened over there. They didn't really want to talk about those things. But coming back, they didn't have no education, like to work someplace. They didn't have no skills. They didn't have a grade 12, they didn't have university like that. But then they managed to raise us somehow. There was no welfare, there was no child tax, there was no old age pension, which they have it today now, no GST long time ago. Somehow they managed to raise us through wild meat. They used to go hunting. And vegetables, they had to have a garden in the summer. They had to have that in the summer to have a garden, and then they would have potatoes and all these vegetables. And they would store them. And in our homes, we used to have a cellar. It's called a cellar, and it was a hole like in a home where you opened it, and it was a storage like a fridge, a refrigerator. It cools off the meat and your whatever you're gonna put there so it don't rot. So in the fall we used to put our vegetables there, and my dad used to hang meat in that cellar to cool off so it doesn't rot. So things like that, our parents used to try and take care of us to raise us when we were small. And then my dad, we used to kind of have, when we got bigger, me and Peter, my brother, we got bigger. My dad, we used to go out and help him to cut wood, loading and all that, and unloading. We used to have to the house. We had to warm with that in the home. We didn't have no what you have this heating system now that that you have this natural gas that warms up your home, and you have this dial that you put it up higher. We didn't have nothing like that in the home. We had to put wood in the stove and warm up. My mom used to cook in the stove, used to call cook stove, in the heater we used to have. My mom used to cook with that cook stove on top with frying pan and stuff, oven, bannock. Every day, he used to be cooking like that for us. Today we have stoves that are electric. We just turn the knob and it comes on. There was nothing like that long ago. And when we take our baths at home, we used to have a big, one of those big tubs they call it. They were round. And then we had to get water, by hand. If it's in the winter time, we had to get the snow and we melt that. And we put it in a tub, and we wash ourselves with that sponge bath. We sit in a tub and wash ourselves with our hair and everything. And that's how we took our baths a long time ago. And today you just turn the faucet, and the water comes out, and there's a bathtub. There's a shower, nothing like that for us. We had a difficult life long time ago. And the foods were healthy that we ate. I don't remember having candy for longest time. Not like today, every day kids have candy at home and pop, chips. We never had that in our days when I was young, because we only travel with horses, wagons, and sleighs to even go far to the store to get anything. And everything was expensive, and plus our parents didn't work, they didn't have no money. The only way my dad used to go out and do some work for farmers and get maybe $5 and like that, and that's how he would get extra stuff for us for the home, like for milk, sugar, and stuff like that. These extra stuff was difficult for them raising us. And today, your parents, your grandmas, they have education. They have universities, grade 12, college. They work now. Today, the young kids, they're just like kings and queens today. They get everything. Everything's provided for them at home. They have electricity. They just use the switch, put the light on. Long ago, we didn't have no electricity. We used lamps to light our to have a light in our home in the nighttime. We didn't have electricity. And then when it's time to go to sleep, we had to blow that lamp and go to bed like it was early too. We weren't allowed to be running around in the evening. Our grandparents were strict like that. We weren't supposed to be playing outside in the dark. So they would send us inside after supper. We would ask our parents a little bit of tobacco. My great grandmother would sit there and we would give them tobacco a little bit to tell us stories. He used to share a lot of stories to us. And then after that, we had to go to sleep, get ready, and go to bed. It was already like 9, 10 o'clock. The latest is 9. We had to be in bed. And today, what happens to the young people? They wander around in the dark. Even coming daylight, they still walk around. Long ago, we weren't allowed to do that. Our grandparents were strict. You know, they'll get a whip. They'll go get a branch from the bush. You don't listen, they'll whip you with it. They'll spank you with it in your bum or in the legs. So you have to follow that what they had trying to teach you. But today, what happens? Parents can't even do that because you know why? They would call the police or social services, the young people, and they would try and charge their parents or they would be taken away. Those things are happening today in the present time, which is not that great. So our young kids, they don't really listen. They don't really respect anybody. They don't respect anyone at all. Period. Even though they're trying to be taught with respect at home, they don't. They still do what they want to do. Today now it's different. I see these things now as I'm growing up. I'm growing older now. I'll be 69 here in this year. I've seen a lot of things as I was growing up. These things, what I'm sharing, it's the things comparing like long time ago and up to date. Even water we used to have to haul. Used to be far and some had wells. They had to go, everybody had to take turns to help around the house. What happens today, the young kids? They don't help around the house. They rather go into their games or cell phones. We didn't have no games long time ago or cell phones or even a phone. We didn't have a phone at home. Today, this is what I see now, the young kids. They're on their cell phones, TV, they have all that. For us, it was nothing like that long ago. We didn't have nothing like that. We had to help out with chores, whatever we had to do, clean up inside with our mom, helping our dad outside, whatever chores there is. We listen to our parents too, what they tell us, and our grandparents. They share a lot of good things to us, how to behave, how to respect, how to be honest, not become liars and stuff. All these good things they taught us growing up. But today now it's like a mixed up world for kids. It seems like it's hard for them to learn these things. Seems like it's hard to tell them, to educate them with all these good things for them to understand because there's so much interference with these technical stuff that they're using. The computers, the laptops, you name them all. their minds are somewhere else. They're learning something that they shouldn't. Sometimes I try to talk to my grandkids about these things. They listen for a while, they're back at them again. Trying to take them out, take them to ceremonies and watch, and try and have them learn. Try and have them to dance, powwow dance. Trying to have them go to a feast, not staying at home all the time and being that games or cell phones. They have to put those away if they're going to smudge. Try and teach them how to smudge themselves, how to smudge while we're going to go on to travel or at home or at a feast. And to sit properly, trying to teach them when I take them to ceremonies, especially with the little girls, to sit properly, not cross legged, like that, or put their legs wide open, not like that. They can't sit like that. My grandparents were so strict. My mom was strict. I had to sit properly at the ceremony, and I had to be quiet. So what happens today when I go to a ceremony, like say a round dance, or say to a feast, kids running around. They don't even sit still. They're supposed to be sitting still. Even at a round dance, they go in and out. I often wonder they should just stay home. What they come and get, they should stay home and sleep. They just go in and out. Long ago, you weren't allowed to do that. Us children, we had to behave and sit still. Watch the people dance or take part to dance. That was how it was long time ago. But today it's different. Like I'm saying, I'm watching these things, what is happening today. It feels like maybe the parents, they're not trying to teach them or take them or just let them be, or I'm not sure. But I'm still trying to follow that protocol where you have to try and teach your kids, your grandkids, your Japanak. I'm still focusing on that. I'm still talking to them. And I'm still taking them to ceremonies, so they don't lose these things that would benefit for them in the long run. I want them to carry on to teach their children, their grandkids in the future. These are the things that's going to guide them and protect them in the future. That's why I'm doing that. This is why my parents and grandparents used to taught us these things, teach us. They educate us. So it's really important these things to learn how to respect, be honest, like that. Talk properly, not swearing. Up to today, I don't really know myself to swear because I was never allowed. It's part of respect. I couldn't really swear. My mom and dad would tell us that's not proper. You can't be using bad words on people or anyone. Those are not good words. You use good words on people. When you see people, shake hands, say hello. That's what I was taught to do. Young and old, they used to say, respect people around you. Don't put them down. Don't say bad stuff to them. It's not good. You're going to hurt their feelings because they have feelings. You can easily hurt a person saying bad things to them or swearing at them. That's not proper. That's not good. So I try to talk nicely to anyone, young and old. When I see them, I say hello, and ask them, how was your day? How's everything? How's everybody in your family? Those good things you talk about. But today, now, it's not really like that for the young people, the teenagers that I see, because there's a lot of interference like drugs. They use alcohol and drugs mixed with different drugs, hard drugs, I would say. Even those drugs, I don't even understand them. I never heard about them, what they're using. Long ago, it wasn't like that. Us teenagers, we didn't go around using these hard drugs, different drugs, and be out there all night long, drinking alcohol. There was alcohol long ago, but to a certain extent, they used to use that only on special occasions. Some people, not like everyday thing. It wasn't everyday use. So, a lot of these things I realize as I'm growing up and older. Back to the day school, there was we had mean teachers. There was one teacher that was so mean that he was real tall and he was bald headed. His name was Mr. Isinger. I'll never forget that teacher because he was so cruel to us. He used to drink during the school class time. You can smell that breath. And he would just hit us in the head or anything with it or with a roller and stuff like that. He would push you, force you to do things. That's how cruel that teacher was. Not only that teacher, and there was other teachers too. And then our parents, when we tell our parents about these things, they were afraid of them. Like they would be reported to a police, and they didn't want to be involved with the police because it already affected them from a residential school. They were already afraid of that. They didn't want to cause any trouble anymore. So for us, day school, they couldn't help us. We just tell us, just listen, sit still. But when we can't do our work, we're stuck. We can't do anything. I tell them, well, you have to try hard. Ask them what to do. But they force us, I said. That's how wicked they were. It's just so terrible. Yuksa met gue chipta ma. Nanas kumun.
Our matriarch here at the school, Doreen Daniels, is told the listeners, the viewers, very wise things, stories, and I hope you remember what she talked about, because a lot of what has happened in the past still affects us today, and we have to try and change what's going to happen in the future. And it's up to the young people now to make their life good, like she was saying. So I would like to thank her, Nanas Kumau, for coming here to share her knowledge. So thank you again, Dory.
Yeah.
And she'll be back again tomorrow.
Hmm.
So stay tuned now. Thank
Hi,
you.
hi.
Ay.
Yeah.
Hey, we're back again. We're waiting for our next guest speaker to come in and talk. But I'll kind of add on to what Mrs. Doreen Daniels was talking about. She was talking about that she went to the day school on the reserve here. Um, yeah, a lot of these, the older generation, they went to day schools, and quite a bit of them also went to residential schools. I went to both. The first, I would say the first, at the age of 5 years old until about 8 years old, I went to residential school in St. Michael's, which is in Duck Lake. You know what? I was thinking about that. This residential school was called St. Michael's Indian Residential School. You know, when you look back, for those that are, into this Roman Catholic thing, Saint Michael is an archangel. Am I right? Saint Michael is an angel. Yeah. To protect the people, for sure. We are not protected in that school. That way, really. Yeah, so, that word residential school, students went there. They actually lived there. That means right from September right up to the end of June. So, you never got to see your family for those 10 months. Can you imagine what a 5-year-old, if you're 5 years old, to be taken away from your family, the love and the security of your family at 5 years old, and to be taken and forced to go to that school for you to go live there with these strangers. These they call them sisters or nuns, and all of them, they dressed in black. I always remember that. They dressed in black, all black, and the only white parts you saw was a little piece of white right here. And boy, did they ever carry these big crosses. Tapwe, real big crosses. They either had them around their neck or they would tie them around their waist. Real big crosses, representing God. Yeah, so that was my first part of my school experience, was going to residential school. Then after residential school, they had a school in Sweetgrass. They called it Sweetgrass Indian Day School. I still don't know why they call it that, day school. But anyways, that way, what Mrs. Doreen Daniels was talking about, you had 2 levels. There was the upstairs and the downstairs. Sweetgrass had this old red brick. They called it was an old brick building. It had an upstairs and a downstairs. The upstairs, it had the higher grades, like she was saying, in the basement, they had the lower grades. They didn't have nursery or pre-K, or they call it now. They had a kindergarten. A lot of these kids, they went to school, they didn't know a word of English, and they expected them to learn to read, to do math. Like, how can you learn those subjects when you didn't even know the language? I still, and I remember there were these poles that supported columns that supported they were in the basement. They supported probably the upstairs so it doesn't collapse. And I remember, man, this one teacher used to tie these kids, their arms around these columns. Everybody was scared. Honest to God, they were petrified. They were scared. They were scared to talk. Like, how you gonna, when the teacher asked, does anybody know what the answer to this is everybody was too scared to put up their hand. And Doreen was saying that they fed the kids these dog biscuits. They were honest. I think they were dog biscuits. They were hard. I bet you if you hit somebody on the head with these biscuits, you would have knocked them out. And they had these powdered milk in big barrels. Big barrels. Do you remember that, Ben? Big barrels. Yeah. And powdered milk. And that it didn't even taste like milk. And cod liver oil. Oh my God! All the you couldn't spit it out. You couldn't felt like throwing up. That's how god awful that taste was. Yeah, jeez, I can't. And we were even if it was super cold outside, we were forced to go out. Yeah, 50 below. You were forced to go outside, and all these kids huddled against the wall of the school. And the kids that were on the inside, when these kids on the outside were cold, the kids on the outside will come inside the circle, and the ones that were inside the circle on the inside will come on the outside just to keep each other warm, like a bunch of animals. That's what it reminds me of. So yeah, Doreen was saying that you kids nowadays, oh my goodness, you know how lucky you are to have a beautiful school. And the only thing you need to, this is your job, is to go to school and to learn. Back in our days, these people that are talking, we had horrible experiences with school. It's amazing. I finished grade 12. Honest to goodness. And I even went to university. I think that's what, those past experiences, I always thought in my mind when I was in residential and day school that if I ever finish, my school, I was going to become a teacher. And the First Nations kids are never going to go through that again. I'm going to speak up for them. And to be proud of who they are, not to be put to shame. Yeah, so it was quite Doreen was right about what she was talking about growing up on the reserve. You guys have it easy. You kids have it easy. Really easy. All of us, we grew up in hardship. That way. In the wintertime, like, Doreen was saying, there was no running water. We had to make our own water by bringing in snow, melting it and everything. And we had no, in my house, when my brother, we were small, we had no electricity. Oh my God, for many, many years. We always had coal oil lamps. And, to preserve that oil, that coal oil, because, none of our families had that much money, that those lamps were shut off at a certain time at night, and everybody had to go to bed. And I remember many times it would be cold in the house in the morning. Oh my goodness, nobody wanted to get up to make a fire in the stove. And the waters froze. Can you imagine you kids, if you had this morning, if you had nowadays you young people, all you do is go up to a wall, turn a little knob, and it's warm in the house. Back then, can you imagine if this morning you had to wake up because the house was cold, you had to get up, you had to make a fire in a stove. Yeah, it was hard. And then Doreen mentioned that you had to walk quite a ways to get water. That way, some people had wells, and it wasn't close to the house. You have to walk quite a ways, and you have to carry these big pails of water. Yeah. And I remember, man, we used to take a bath once a week. And because water was really, precious to us, sacred, nobody was allowed to play with water. Not like nowadays, everybody's got these water guns, That way. You see all these kids playing with water. Nobody ever played with water. Water was too precious. And I remember when in the winter time, deep snow. Some of us had to go check our snares because if we didn't, we had nothing to eat for supper or dinner or whatever. But it was good exercise. That's how we all learned to snare rabbits. Everyone, and you have to leave early in the morning. You have to carry this little lamp to find your way to your snares. Because if you didn't leave early enough, a weasel or a magpie or a coyote would kill, take if you caught any rabbits and you have nothing. So you have to leave early enough to go check your snares. And chopping, you have to make sure you had a good supply of wood. So, all of us kids, we used to all help the older people go get wood in the bushes. Yeah, and we were strong. We must have been strong. And we were healthy. I don't remember that much we were ever sick. And, I really admire our mom and dad, our kukum and mushum, what they went through just to finish raising us. I admire them. Yeah. And, not once did they ever leave us alone, too. Yeah, pues.
Oh, you see what Jason was going to talk about,
No.
No?
Is he here?
No,
But anyways, yeah. So that was quite it made us who we are today. Right, Ben? It made us who we are today. Strong, resilient people. They've been trying to get rid of us since the beginning of time. Yeah, and we're still here. Yeah. So I want to get Ben Watney to come and talk. So I'm going to get him. Is this chair good enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, wear my hat this morning. Good morning. Good morning, my fellow elders. I'm back here again, and usually I was brought up to identify yourself. My mother is Noglala, Sioux Indian from North Dakota, Turtle Mountain Reserve. My father, Lennox Watney, is from Red Pheasant Reserve. And I originate from my great-great-grandfather, Watney. I'm hearing a lot of stories about how poverty-stricken we were. I don't believe we were poverty-stricken before the treaty, because God put us on a continent full of buffalo, about 20 million buffalo. So that was our food source. And when you eat buffalo, your skin goes red, eh? So that's where we got our name, the Red Man, eh? It was a diet of buffalo. And Doreen talked about the berries, the sacred berries. I know that story too. So when the treaties were signed, they decimated our livelihood, our food. They took our food source out. And the treaty talks about our food source are deer, antelope, moose, and the settlers that came in their animals are domesticated, cattle, horses, things like that. But today they've put the law to our disadvantage. When we leave the reserve, we can't hunt off the reserve now. These new parties that are coming into existence, like Sass Party, they're selling crown land. So you can't legally hunt on crown land anymore because it belongs to a farmer. And that's called a Settler Act. It's white privilege. These white people, when they came over here, they're destitute, they're ragged, they had all the diseases that's all they had when they came here. They didn't have nothing. And our people looked at them and knew they were sick. A lot of them had sickness from the ships. So our people knew what medicine to give them to survive. But in turn, with the diseases that they brought in, TB, all these new diseases, like this new disease here. It's called COVID. It's not a new disease. It originated way back in the Bible times too. The plague, But back then, the plague was introduced to straighten out a ruler that had Israel in bondage, Today, and I'll mention, Doreen talked about what we had to go through. I remember that when we had to cut wood, we had to pick berries all summer and can them, sealer them, everything. That was your food for the winter. My grandfather told me these victory gardens didn't originate from the Europeans. We already had gardens here. We can go back 2,200 years when the Romans were starving in Europe. A guy reported that he met people in the Americas that knew how to grow vegetables. And the Romans didn't know what the hell a tomato was. So they called it devil's fruit, a tomato. And you might as well say the first pilgrims that ever had a Thanksgiving dinner was here. The Indians were the ones. We had the wild turkey, we had the pig, we had all these different animals. And we fed them. And that's how Rome survived. The only thing that they had in Europe was cabbage, and you had to boil it, fry it, or bake it. When they took the Indians here from America to Spain and Europe, they took them as slaves. History talks about they took about 40,000 natives out of here. In Espanol, Ontario, they took about 5,000 Cree-speaking Indians over there. And these people showed them how to grow gardens. And they're the ones that kept the Roman shoulder alive. So this was brought into effect 2,000 years ago. Native people do not have to fight a white man's war. They put that there in that clause, Treaty 6. And it still stands. There's no conscription on Indian reserves. They don't allow it because of that deed. We helped them survive, and that we're going back 2,000 years on that. Now, when I was born, Harry Brabant, my uncle, was there. He witnessed my birth, April 18, 1949, and he kept in touch with me when I was 2 years old. He said, "You're already talking, Ben. You're already reading." And he told me, I counsel the ladies, because this is how you bring up a child. When that baby's in a womb, you talk to that baby. And you say, your mother did that. That's why you could read when you're two and a half years old. I knew every Christmas carol when I was growing up. I was trained in the womb, just like Harry Brabant. Harry Brabant said, in the womb, I knew how a buffalo sounded. I knew how a train sounded. So when I was born, it was nothing new to me. So he said, now this man, he was 104 years old when he passed away. And the knowledge that he had, he could have been a doctor, lawyer, whatever. he passed that knowledge on to me about Wakutuan. You have to know your relatives, Ben. You should never be stuck in this world as long as you know your relatives. And another thing, you don't want to marry your cousins. That's what he brought up with me right away. There's too much going, that's happening now, he said. And back when he was younger, that's the way he was trained. You got to know your relatives. So, the history comes real back. It revived my mind today. Like culturally, I was trained by, my grandfather went to residential school. And he said, I was 7 years old when I was taken to residential school. And my dad came with me and he told, it was probably the principal at Battleford Industrial School, if you molest any of my children, 9 boys, 5 daughters, I'll come and kill you tomorrow. Now, Whitney was not just a talking, he was a general back then. He was a general of this Treaty 6 area. I'm not talking about Fine Day. Fine Day became the general during the rebellion, of Treaty 6. So Whitney had that title before him. And Whitney, every winter he went south. He went to that Old Faithful. That's where he went and spent his winters. And he would take 20, 30 horses with him over there. That's how he bargained, So I'm talking about 1820s, around there, 1830s. He was already in estates. It wasn't called estates then. And I asked Harry Brabant, what does America mean? He said, well, you know what Canada means, Canada, it's clean. And he said, America means America. It smells like dung. I looked at him, it makes sense. They killed all the buffalo there. And he said all these civil wars, brothers were fighting against each other. Millions died there in the States. So, just imagine if my grandfather witnessed that. These white guys killing each other, And I'm talking about Sitting Bull. He witnessed that. And he was not a chief like history says. He was a medicine man. And when they killed 783 women, children, and elders at Wounded Knee, the maternal clan mothers told him, you go out and destroy that man, Custer. So it took my grandfather 4 years to organize. And he brought in about 6,000 warriors to do that job, but it only took 12 to kill Custer. Our grandfather, his name was Big Man. Eliza Big Man. Nolan Baptiste's mother, eh? She's a Poyak, eh? And she's a half-sister to my grandmother, Mike Baptiste's grandmother, eh? So that's how close the relationships come, the Whitney and the Baptiste family, eh? So anyway, I'll go back to what had happened there. The reason I bring in these people is because of international law. They knew international law. You know, these people are trying to say we didn't have any laws when they came here. We damn right we had our own laws. We had ceremonies. That's how we raised the children, in ceremonies. They knew when a man was a man and a woman was a woman, because they had the ceremonies first. And that's what I was brought up that way too, but differently, because my grandfather went to residential school. He said, Ben, I'm going to teach you to know what usufructuary means. So I know what it means now. It's a treaty term. So he taught me all these terminologies to understand treaty. And the reason, he said, I don't want you to ever go to a residential school. He never said why. Till later on when I became a man, like 2021, he said, I wasn't molested, but my friend was molested. And I caught them. And I said, what'd you do? I gave that guy a good lick and he just fixed him up. He said, no. I got kicked out of school. So my dad came to the school. I'm going to make my promise today. I'm going to kill you. He told that principal. That principal said, we already fired that teacher. And that's on record right now. You know, my grandpa did the interview about that. And you know, I said, Grandpa, you know, I heard that every time somebody was sick, they'd always bring that person to you and you'd stay with him. Yeah, I never got sick, he said. My dad and my mother gave the principal hell about that. And they said, well, Peter's got a gift. Anybody that gets sick, he looks after them. So I asked Grandpa, what did you gain out of it? Well, I'm a carpenter. I'm a journeyman carpenter. I learned, he said, I made 83 coffins. School. That's how many kids died in that school. How about Delmas, 63, he said. He made the coffins. And yet they're finding unmarked graves now. So I asked Grandpa, well, let's go back further. I mean, like I heard Whitney didn't want to sign the treaty. Yeah, he became a Christian. And he believed if he sold the land, that's just like giving away his birthright. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll curse myself. He asked Red Pheasant, you want to take it? Yeah, I'll take it, he said. So Whitney said, you know, there's not anybody be called Red Pheasant here. Pond maker. Those names are gone, son or child. Well, he said, what do you mean? He said, in the States, they're doing that. They're killing the treaty chiefs. And they're using Indian Affairs, Indian Act chiefs to do it. So that, you know, the proof is there. So my grandpa said, this got carried away when the Prime Minister of Canada took over. He was a drunk and alcoholic. He went further. okay, we got those Indian people now. We're going to take the Indian out of them. And you heard speakers here talking, you cannot use your language. You cannot practice your religion. That John A. MacDonald did that. And he instructed all his people in Indian affairs, kill the Indian and the child. And not only did they kill the Indian and the child, they killed the child. I asked my grandpa, how far would these guys go? All the way, he said, the treaty Indians that are going to school, they're going to wipe them out so they don't have nothing to own. I'm talking about 1970 here when he told me this. And I thought about it. Like today we know they're finding unmarked graves. But mark my word, those are treaty Indians. The children of the people that signed treaty. They're taken right out of here. And not only you think that's mean, the Canadian government allowed the German Nazis to come and work in Indian affairs to study what they do. They knew this Indian Act is apartheid. It's racist. So they said, okay, we'll let you study it. And today, like I don't even want to think about it. We're still sitting in a reserve like this. We can be rounded up anytime. But luckily, our people are spread out into the urban areas, Red Pheasant, there's 2,400 band members, Less than 600 live here. So there's a lot of people out there working that have made a life, and and they don't have nothing to come back to because there's no housing, there's no work here. They're content out there. There's 39 Watties in Norway right now, so they're content over there. Edgar Baptiste, the forgotten, he's got 35 offspring in United Kingdom. Those girls will never come back because they've married the lords of England over there. There were 200-300 million each. So, they'll never come back to Red Pheasant. But, we have his ashes and he wants to be buried here. He wants to come home and be buried here because this is where he was from. And he wants the other half in Ireland where his wife's from. So half goes there and, half over here. So that's, if you want to talk about culture, these guys know. Like Edgar knew about culture already when he got his mind back, He remember what he went through. But Ben, he said, there's so much poverty on Red Pheasant, that's probably why I joined the army. Just to see the world and bring something home. That's what he wanted, I talked to veteran, what's his name, Boudry. He said the same thing. I was 17 years old. Didn't he find? He said, I was 60 years old. I joined the army just to see the world, to get a better life. Because they were promising land and I don't know, $2,000, which the veterans never got. My Uncle Gavin always said that he had veteran land there, but that's Indian, Red Pheasant Indian land. When I was a consular, I came back from Ottawa, working in Ottawa in 74. I kicked off the Anglican Church and I kicked off the Roman Catholic Church. You guys don't own land here. That's what I did. Because they were trying to say that they owned that land. No, they didn't. And I was probably getting even. Because when I went to day school, my parents were Church of Christ. And I went to an Anglican school. And they wouldn't let me go on trips because I was Church of Christ. I didn't know the difference. I was 6, 7 years old, I come home, Dad, they would let me go to town or nothing, on a trip. I said, why? Because I'm a Church of Christ. So whatever that meant, I didn't know. But see, that discrimination already started, And I know the Anglicans' children were treated better in that school. If you didn't have a religion in that school, you were abused. And the teacher was the biggest abuser. Mrs. Sprague, the people here try and treat her like a queen. Here's an old bag, you know. She was mean. Like we got straps, real big straps like this, eh? Whack, not this way. Right on your ear. You know, what do you learn, eh? Nothing. You try and go home like that, you can't even straighten your fingers out. Even today. When I applied for my day school, I didn't bring that up. I was in a hospital for 10 months, and I said, I just want my family to get the money. I don't even want to contest this, eh? But now I think about it, and I went to another lawyer. I want to bring this up, what they did to me. Guy throwing a knife, sticking it through my boot. And when I got home, my boot was full of blood. And that teacher was responsible for that. He never did nothing. Well, just take, when you get home, wash it up. When I got home, my boot just full of blood, eh? So my dad got rid of her just right now. And I seen abuse in school where a girl got grabbed by the hair and thrown on the floor. Just bang on her, right on her back, eh? And I asked her about it, and she put a mental block there. And no. So I mentioned it to my dad. He was the chief, eh? So my chief went and asked her dad, is this really happening? He said, I don't know. So we went to the mother, and the mother asked her, and yeah, it did happen. It happened to her. But see, she's already mentally blocking it, eh? When I worked in a rehab here, I was working with alcoholics, and I was dealing with people that, I called it unresolved root of bitterness. What it was residential school. Things that happened to them there, and they hadn't dealt with it, eh? So now, second generation, eh? We're picking it up. And the father, he wasn't given any parenting skills, neither was the mother. So how in the hell can you come out of a school after 10 years and have anything? And all they did was teach them how to work in a damn barn. Grade 2, you're all ready to meet the world. You got a grade 2, They tried that with some of my relatives. Bill Watney, no. He finished his grade 12 when he was 15. He was a lawyer when he was 21. He went beyond. And not only that, when he went for residential, he got one of the highest paid compensations, within the millions. So what they did was they put a ceiling there, no more. You could only get up to 250,000, eh? So, but he couldn't tell me how much he got. So I asked him, what are you going to do next? I want to sue Indian Affairs for $10 million. So he must have got it because all his kids are rich, eh? And all his kids are lawyers, deans of university, all highly trained, eh? That's because of the abuse he went through. But he never gave up. He never gave up. His mother, came here, and it was Jim's second marriage. He said, the mother told me, he said, we were poor, no housing, living in a log cabin. So I moved all my family to Battleford. And I went and seen a butcher, and I told him, this is the only money I have. I'm looking for a place. He gave me a house to live in. My husband, Gilbert Watney, became a waterman in Battleford. So he had an income, No, Winston Watney's from that family. My dad taught him how to play guitar. And when my dad got sick, he went in a coma, and Winston went to speak to him. He brought a drum into the hospital there, and he asked the nurses if he could sing. And yeah, it might help, they told him, but this is in intensive care, eh? There was 5 people in there. Winston started singing. Pretty soon, everybody's heartbeats were it was straight like this. People were dying, eh? Pretty soon, their heartbeats were. And the nurse said, whatever he's doing, it's working, See? And that was that heartbeat, eh? So the next day, at about 2 a.m, I told Mom, let's go home. Dad's going to be all right anyway. He was in a coma, eh? So the next morning, we came to the hospital about 10:30, sitting up having porridge, eh? And I said, Dad, there's a doctor. He wanted us to pull the plug on you last night. And my dad is going to hit him. I signed a contract with you guys, 5 things to keep me going. He said, told that Karana, get the hell out of here. So he left, eh? And then my dad asked my mom, who was singing last night? Well, my mom said, I was Winston Whitney. And my dad said, by my time, he said, he was singing that Whitney song, but he missed a lot of, but he tried, eh? But everybody in that intensive care unit recovered. They were out. My dad was out to last another 6 months after that. So those are the good things, eh, that happen, eh, with a drum, and with music. The people on Red Pheasant, we had a big house there, and I found pictures, 1941, 42. They're having gospel meetings in that house. And I seen all my relatives outside there, about 8, 9 Whitneys, Isaac, David Whitney, all these old people. I remember seeing them, but they're already in their 90s, eh? When they died, eh? That's pretty old, 90 years old. But anyway, I think about it. They had a lot of dances, eh? Like violin music. They had to create their own fun. And Peter Benson, eh? He told me one time, he says, that's where I learned to dance, he says. From the girls, eh? I was dancing with all Winston Whitney's sisters, and I learned all those moves, he said. That's where I learned all that stuff. Now I'm talking about 1972 now. I remember when culture started coming in. Round dances and powwows, eh? And, I remember Butch Builder, my neighbor, was involved pretty heavy into that too. But there's also like their dad, Peter Benson, eh? He brought in the American church from the States. And he was like, my aunt Ines Whitney had a real, mental sickness when after Walter Dieter died, her husband. She come looking for help. And my dad said, go and see Peter Benson. And she went and seen him. 2 days later, she had her mind back. Today, she's 93 years old. When she come and talked at Ann Gladys's funeral, 99-year-old, that she just died, eh? And she said, I moved in with my sister-in-law when I was 13 years old. Eli had to go to TB center, eh? He had tuberculosis. So he left for 2 years. So Ina said, I learned from my sister-in-law how to hunt deer, how to, even moose. And here we were with the 22. And, Clifford, Lenny, and all these guys were young, eh? Sylvia was here. They're all, like Violet was the oldest, and then Clifford, Lenny. And she said, like Ina said, I raised them all. And I lived with my sister-in-law 2 years. So the hard times, there was no wood. There was no man to do it. Those women had to cut wood. Those women had to hunt deer. Those women had to haul water. Those women had to do the same thing, melt snow. And then to raise 8 kids on top of that, I remember that. When my uncle came out of that hospital, I remember he used to work in Canada Red and White, and he was like he'd haul stuff from Balford and he'd be dropping the food items, so the farmers would bring them to Red and White. So this guy asked me, he said, "Would you like to work with your uncle?" I said, "Yeah." "What do I do?" He said, "Just wrap the truck with tarps so the stuff don't fall out. I'll give you $20 a month," he said. I was, 10 years old. Boy, I had a lot of money. Like you could buy a butter for 5 cents, meat about that big for $2. So I was bringing groceries home when I was 10 years old to my grandparents. And then I remember hauling posts from over way up here. This was the shortcut, Do you remember this? To Kando. And we had to use a team of horses. We came through this pasture right here. And I remember I hauled in a post. I told Clem I want 25 cents a post. "Okay," he said, But he didn't pay me that much. But he just gave me that 25 cents. But I asked my grandpa, we must have made a lot of money because we brought in over 200 posts, And he said, "Well, we made good money, but it wasn't 25 cents a post." But that's the kind of work that we did. It's called bluestone post, And I remember Joe Dressman, he was kind of blind, and he came and helped. And my dad showed him how to put them posts in there, and he dropped the post in like this, and that bluestone just hit him right in his face. And I grabbed my mom. Mom told me grab some, wipe his eyes with hot water and all that. So Joe was in pain for about 10 minutes. Then he looked, where we left the big house there. When he looked, he said, "Oh, gee, I can see across the lake." That bluestone peeled off all his, what do you call it? Cataracts? Burned them right off. And Joe could see. He just, like he was just pointing at birds and blue jays and everything, So that was, my memories, That's how I was raised. And it was rough. It was a rough. My dad had about 90 head of horses and cattle. And he had to fence them in. But the Indian agent told Whitefield, "Make pounds, and you can charge them $5 a day." So my dad was losing animals, So he went and worked in the States. He worked with Grand Trunk Railway over there. And this was during the war, too. So he was trained, like in the army, And he said, "I looked after ammunition on the trains." And he said, "I was sending 200 a month home." And what's his name there? Paul Nicotine was the one that looked after his horses and cattle. But he said the Indian Affairs had permit system. They wouldn't let me sell my horses or my cattle. See, that's how they trapped us, You couldn't prosper. The Indian Act, they wouldn't let you prosper because they were doing better than the white farmers outside. That's why they cut off everything. Isn't that ridiculous? They take away everything from you, and all of a sudden the Indians do better, and then the white people start complaining. So they got cut, and then they enforced that permit system. See, that's the Indian Act. That is not treaty. Now this school here, I look at it today. I have to go out and campaign for Doug. What's his name there? I forget his name already. But the deal he made when I give you that school, he said, I want the chief and constable Ben to hire you. So I became project manager in the school. I know every nut and bolt that went into the school here. Because I worked with an engineer from Saskatoon, and he told me what to order and how to order. It's not what I knew, but that was part of my deal for bringing the school here. So that's the stuff that I was taught to do when I was young. Don't be afraid. You ask what you have. My grandpa said they don't owe you anything. Nobody owes you anything, but with our resources of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba, we can afford to ask what we want, and we should get it. And school is one of them. We had the day school given to us in 1893, and that school was there for 100 years. So now this is a reality. This is a treaty promise right here. This school, Clifford Whitley School, and it's a treaty promise. And it's up to us to keep that promise intact, eh? We shouldn't be able to pay tax here. Treaty 1, no tax. They were given $125 each. By the time they got down to Treaty 6, they swindled us down to $5 each. See? But over there, the Indian was accustomed to the white people and their ways, eh? And I was reading those reports. This guy was saying, you see that stuff on the side of the river there? Are you going to tax that? That's ours. Coal. That Indian knew it. They're going to use that for their trains and their factories. So that Indian, that one Indian there, I wanted to laugh. He took everything from that guy that was negotiating, eh? He just stole it from him. And that guy couldn't do nothing, otherwise he would have got killed. But that chief was good, what he did. He just told him who was boss. That guy said, that chief says, I'm the mayor here. He heard that term. He told that negotiator that I'm the mayor here. And this guy was from La Palma, Manitoba. Nelson House, that's his name, eh? So, I know that history because I met with him. Nelson House, what a nice name, But the thing is, the treaty has to go further. And this is what I want to instill in the children. Take the legal context and do it. I mentioned Oprah Winfrey, eh? She inherited billions because her grandparents were slave owners that enriched the plantations in the States. How about our resources? Who did we enrich? The Queen and all her subjects and all the provinces and all the premiers. They get all salaries from our resources. We have to turn that around. The pandemic is being funded by our money out of England. Trudeau, he goes and accesses that money. Like, what's his name, that last Prime Minister of Canada, he wanted to go and watch the Olympics. So he went to the Governor General of Canada to prorogue the government, to stop the government. Now, if he was the boss, he could have done that. But see, that proves he's not the boss here. Canada is not a republic. It's not a country on its own. It's the Commonwealth of the British. We're under the Commonwealth, eh? That's why our monies can go over there. Like, what's his name? Cretin didn't like the Queen. He used to call him Brits, because he knew our money was going over there, eh? And then he tried his best. He helped me. We got rid of 2,800 people, that were public service, that were working with Indian Affairs. And those salaries came to David Hennique and all the chiefs when Dave was president of FSIN. I lobbied for that. Yet I was called a traitor. I went to the government. I went to Trudeau and Chrétien. I said, "How come they won't meet our leaders when they're too militant?" Well, David Hennique went and fought Second World War. Where did you go? See, I asked him, "Did you go and fight for us? Did you go and fight for your country?" They couldn't answer that. I said, "You can't call a guy militant like David Hennique. He wouldn't put his life on the line." Just like I got 114 Aboriginal veterans from Red Pheasant that put their life on the line, and they didn't have to because of the treaty. But just to prove that they went to court and then they won in court, and it was decided there by the judge that Indians don't have to go and fight. That's a conscription allowed in treaty for us. So those are the good things that happened, to Red Pheasant. They have a record of our veterans, and there's to me, I was raised with these people that are heroes of mine. Alec Dakota was a hero of mine, an Olympian, and first sergeant of the Edmonton City Police, and a treaty Indian, the first treaty Indian, and also the first treaty Indian to win at an Olympics, 1912. His trophies are in the library or downstairs in Battleford. When we brought that thing there, nobody believed that he was from Red Pheasant. So Greg Shepard, he played with Boston Bruins. He's my buddy. I got him to push it, and he's the one that got him, put in the Hall of Fame here in Battleford. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made it. See, but that's discrimination, in its highest form. My grandfather and Alec Dakota were soccer players. They won the title here for the it was called Battleford Northwest Territory Champions. From there, they went to Montreal and won. And that's an Indian school being the best soccer team in Canada. Unheard of, But scouts were watching this Alec Dakota. Like they were watching him when he'd run, nobody catch him, he'd go and score. So right away, coaches were saying, "Let's get this guy to train." But his father got killed here by a farmer in town, out by Sweetgrass. So the mother married another police, and then they moved to Edmonton, And Alec was about 15. So when he was 17, he joined the army, the Edmonton police force over there. Within 2 years, he was a sergeant. Some guy jumped off a bridge to commit suicide. Highgate Bridge, they call it. Alec jumped off, saved him. He got promoted to sergeant, and they gave him a motorcycle and everything. You know, they promoted him, eh? So he did good. And then there was a race that they started in Alberta, and he won that race about 3 years in a row. So they just named it after him, Alec Dakota race, because he won he won everything, you know. He didn't have no competition. And then when the Olympics came, a guy from Montreal, two people came down from Montreal. One was Tom Longboat, and Alec raced against this guy, this white guy, and he lapped him. Like Alex thought he was catching, and the guy was leaving him. He caught him at the finish line and beat him. And the guy stopped him. He's got one more to go. You're going to the Olympics, they told him. And then when he ran against Tom Longboat, they stepped on the finish line same time. You know, they're just teasing, eh? They didn't want to beat each other, eh? But see, my grandpa told me a lot of stories about Alec, because Alec was killed by a sniper when he was in France. And my grandpa got a gold watch, eh? And he said this. Alec went to a race over there in England, and they told me, "Well, you're good, Rowan. Go and try. You might win." So when he went up there, here was a bike race. So this guy said, "Well, here, borrow my bike." So Alec caught the guys and beat him. So when it came to giving the prize, the king, they forgot the trophies. The king took off his gold watch, gave it to him as a prize. So anyway, when that sniper killed him, the sniper took that watch from him, eh? And Alec had written about that watch. But my grandpa got that watch probably 2 months later. The sniper that killed him, eh? He had the watch, and so they sent it to my grandpa, eh? So it's still here, you know. The family still have that watch. So this is what I was raised with, eh? Like, you know, like that's why I accept the challenge. There's nothing impossible. Like every child in the school has an imagination, eh? Like God gives you an imagination, and He wants you to use it. You know, if He gives you a nice, fancy house, work toward that house. Those kids, eh? A lot of kids, they grow up in poverty here, and if God's giving them a picture of a house, I hope they just follow that and get it. Or else, you know, I used to always think, well, I like to fly, you know. And when I sobered up, I saw Ronald Reagan there. He was getting sworn in as president, eh? And I said, God, you know, this guy is about 80 years old, and I don't have a job. You know, 2 days later, I was flying helicopters in Winnipeg. I got accepted. So that's the kind of imagination I use, eh? And that was instilled in me from an early age. So the imagination, you got to put good things in there. The children have to be brought up with good things. And when they grasp it, fine. Like I remember studying all these instruments on a helicopter and flying at night. I had to fly at night. No eyesight, eh? And I was thinking, my grandson, this is nothing for him. He's 8 years old. He's using the computer. He's already doing it, eh? And he's, you know, it's right there on a screen. So it's nothing to today for the young children to grasp that, eh? Use your imagination. And I encourage the teachers here to promote that imagination that children have, eh? Not to stifle it. some teachers will put a kid down that's not using their imagination. But I said, these teachers have to promote that imagination that God has given us. And that's where I'll end my talk for today.
This elder here, Thea, is so full of knowledge. He's free. If you invite him to go to your school and talk to your kids about anything, he's very highly knowledgeable, especially on treaties and the history part of it and the effects it has on it. So he can be, if you want Ben Watney to come to your group, school, to talk to the students, you can get a hold of me here at Clifford Watney School, and with his permission, I'll give you his number to you guys, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this guy here. So his name is Ben Watney, very knowledgeable.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank him again. And we're not that we're always enjoy having him here. And I personally learned lots. Braden learned lots about the history of his own reserve. And me, I learned lots too. Especially, some of the people mentioned, I used to know, I heard of them.
Yeah.
And that he even talked about, I didn't know about this, the name America.
Yeah.
And he brought it up and said America.
America.
Yeah, that word America means it smells poopy.
They killed all the buffalo
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
the Civil War, eh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so.
They must have been in a lot of shock, eh?
Yeah, true. But anyways, thank you again.
Yeah.
And we'll be back here at 1. We have 2 more people to go through. So everybody come back here at 1. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know.